Before we get going, though, I want to introduce myself. I'm Chris Gordon. I'm the Programming Manager for Readings. And on behalf of Plum Publishing and Readings, we are delighted to be here with you, delighted to be spending this lunchtime with you. I want to make sure that you're all on speaker view just before we get going, because that way it will feel like you're in the back room with Paul West. This is, my friends, a once in a lifetime opportunity. So take it while you can. Take it, my friends. And I just want to let you know that we are going to be gas bagging. We're going to be chatting amongst ourselves. Paul's going to do a little bit of a demonstration. But I reckon before we get all that going, before we start thinking about gardening and the countries that we live in, we've got to take a bit of a moment out of our busy days, out of our busy lives, just to acknowledge that wherever we are from Australia, we're living at the moment on land that's not ours, on land that's not been seeded. And I reckon it's really important that we take that time out to reflect what that actually means, especially when we're about to talk about gardening, for goodness sake, especially when we're about to talk about how beautiful our country is. At the moment, I'm speaking from the Kulin Nation. And on behalf of everyone that's joining us, whether or not you're viewing it now or later, I want us to say thank you to the First Nations people. I want us to say, take this opportunity to learn their stories and their songlines so that we can understand the country that we live on with greater grace. I want to say to all of you out there that here in 2021, it doesn't seem enough just to be acknowledging that we're living on stolen ground. It doesn't seem big enough. It doesn't seem to be making enough of a gesture. So I reckon what we've got to do is make a commitment that we are going to read some of the stories from our First Nations people and that we're going to listen to our First Nations people so that we can understand this beautiful country. So on behalf of all of you here, I'm sending my respects, but I'm also sending my gratitude. But now to you, Paul West, a bloke that's been gardening Australia from top to bottom for years and years now, who has just released this gorgeous book, Homegrown, a year of growing, cooking and eating. You make it sound like your very own personal diary, Paul.
Oh, well, Chris, it feels like it, when it's a journey through the seasons like that, it really does feel like it was quite a personal account of of day-to-day life, and that interaction of the environment of where I am and with my family and that interplay between kitchen and garden in my household and my broader community. And just on the back of what you said there, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm coming today from Jirranganj country as a part of the Yuin Nation on the far south coast of New South Wales. And, I just, for me, gardening is a way of really, as a colonizer, to be able to connect with country, to be able to spend that time and start to get on the rhythm of the natural environment in where I am. And it's so incredible and so nourishing. And, it's something I'm really excited and passionate about, Chris. I love gardening and I love that food, both from the garden and from the kitchen, is a really excellent tool that anyone can use to be able to connect in a deeper way with themselves and their own health, whether that be physical or mental well-being, with the health of their community, whether that's family, friends, or the kind of broader relationships that we have wherever we live, and also to be able to have that connection to the environment and country of where you are, and to be able to have a step outside of the human world, the human-centric world at least, and to be able to bear witness to those rhythms and changes that happen in the garden. And that's why it was really nice for me to be able to write this book as a passage through the seasons and where I am here in Australia, in the southeastern corner of temperate Australia.
Lucky bloke to be living up there. Come on, let's just all have a little moment where we reflect on where Paul West has landed.
Bermagui, it's a pretty. I'm slumming it here, Chris.
Yeah, it's a treat. You're living your life's a bit of a treat, Paul West.
Well, I know. Hopefully, we can welcome, in particular, all those people coming from Naarm there to be able to come up and visit this summer, because we've missed our visitors here. It's been really nice to have this community as a kind of little sleepy seaside village for the last 2 years with just, a kind of very tight-knit local community. But, while I was writing the book, and then, but we love people to come and celebrate and enjoy this part of the world because it's very special. It's very spectacular.
This beautiful book of yours that goes through the seasons step by step, and we'll talk a bit about that later on, has got the most glorious photos of different gardens that are happening in that area. That's happening in your little township.
Yeah, we I was very lucky to work with two great photographers. Chris Middleton did the cover shoots and a few of the the food he did the food photography. He's a Melbourne-based photographer, well, now high school teacher. I think he came out of retirement just for this. If we got the call,
I think he's
another,
one of your fans.
And but the local, the kind of the outdoor photography. See, look at that. See, that was a Chris Middleton shot. Look at that. Look at that.
It's like Eden there, isn't it?
Epic
it's like
posing.
Some depiction of Eden.
Yeah, well, Eden's a little bit further south.
I
didn't get to.
And look at that one there. That's gorgeous.
Oh yeah, see, that was that. Yeah, look at that. And I love it, Chris. Like whenever the book comes to life is in a hard copy, the photography always happens at the end of the writing, or towards the end of the writing component. And whenever I look at myself in those photos, all I see is a tired human being that has just punched out like a 50,000 word manuscript. And I can't look like I don't look like this relaxed and happy I don't look publication day relaxed in any of those photos. And I'm just, every book I do, I'm so conscious of. I'm just there like trying to like a thin smile that I can muster, but it's I notice that stuff. No one else does. So, but now anyone that looks at the book will look at it and go, oh, actually, you do look pretty tired there, Paul.
Yeah, I'm going to go back.
You're like, oh, look at, he's exhausted.
Hey, do you find the writing easy? Is it something that comes naturally to you?
I have found it increasingly easy.
Yeah.
This is my third book, second with Plum, and the first one I'd written. Yeah, I began writing about a year after finishing my career as a chef, and I don't know if you know any chefs that can touch type, but I don't.
I do not.
We peck type. It's kind of this tick, 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 tick. So it was really laborious, and for me in the first book, quite a different work life compared to the kind of frenetic movement based, very short. Deadline pressures of working in a kitchen. So to have to sit down and play a really long game with a blank document was something that took a little bit of adjusting. But now...
Can I ask, Paul, did you write that first book all in the last 24 hours before it was due? Is that what I'm hearing?
It was very close to that. It was maybe the last 48 hours, but it was feverish. My two fingers were smoking by the end of it. And I think I've kind of like hit submit on the last bit of manuscript for that and said, I'm never writing another book again. But now I've learned how I work and I've learned how books work. And for me now, it's actually a really enjoyable experience, and especially, I've got a fantastic publisher in Plum, and they just make the whole experience just so easy and enjoyable. And now it's something that I do enjoy. But I think for me, like where I write in my house, it's just kind of over to my right here. But frustratingly, it looks out on my garden. And so for me, it's a real kind of balancing act psychologically to go, well, I need to write about gardening, but I can see the things that I need to do in the garden from where I am as well. So, it was a kind of really difficult process for me to go, no, you can't. Don't procrastinate. Don't go spend the next 3 hours in the garden weeding and watering and maybe I'll put some of those seeds in that I've been meaning to. And actually, I was thinking about transplanting that. And actually, I'm going to get a load of mulch. I'm just going to, I'm going to get in the zone. I'm going to get in the zone for writing about gardening by doing gardening. And there were plenty of days where that did happen, where I was like, I'll garden, and that will inspire me to write about gardening. And then, 8 hours later.
So why write this book now? What was the inspiration behind this book?
Well, I guess for me, I wanted to create a publication for people that was hopefully empowering and hopefully accessible. I mean, I feel like my forte as an author in both the cookery and gardening spaces are writing accessible works. Yeah. I'm not writing the big, reference works that are for the advanced practitioner.
There's certainly nothing didactic about your writing. It does feel like that we're just, in the backyard having a little bit of a gas bag, and you're saying, Hey, are you having trouble with your tomatoes? This is what I reckon you should do.
Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate that. And I mean, I think that's something that I've always been conscious about in my writing style, is to make it that conversational and because with my work with River Cottage and the ABC, I had the privilege of traveling all around Australia and meeting lots of people, and I found that so many people were interested in starting to grow food, or trying to cook or trying to learn how to grow food, but they just didn't know where to start, and they didn't know, the texts were quite, heavy and had a high degree of assumed knowledge. And so I've always really kind of tried to focus on writing things that are accessible for people that want to get started, but also make them detailed enough and have enough meat on the bones for them that even someone who's been gardening their whole life or cooking their whole life can get some joy and inspiration out of them as well.
During all these years of travel and speaking to people, have you found that the terminologies have changed? Like, I was reflecting when I was reading your book that some terms didn't exist when I was younger. They didn't exist, the concept of real food didn't
Yeah.
exist.
Well, Chris, I think that as both gardeners and cooks, we are agents of culture, right? That food is a central pillar of any culture, and when you're growing it and cooking it, I mean, you're the practitioners of that culture. And I love that, here in Australia, we don't, in contemporary Australia, have a kind of a fixed culture. It's constantly changing and morphing and evolving through greater conversations, through waves of migrant communities, and we can kind of take all of that in and then reset our compass to what we want to do. And I've been thoroughly enjoying this realization or this awakening of people that maybe that the kind of industrial food complex didn't necessarily have ourselves or in our communities and our environment at the heart of their best interests. And that actually we can retake that power. It's something that we kind of give away through price and convenience. And I don't want to get on the soapbox, which I've actually got one next to me here for the next part, to like tell people that what they need to be doing in their lives, or that they should be attempting to be self-sufficient wherever they are, because it's not practical. But what I like about my communication, or what I like to do with my communication, is hopefully just to make it a little bit more joyous rather than preachy, to be like, well, these are the amazing benefits that I've gained from connecting with the food that I eat through growing it and cooking it and sharing it. And I find that those benefits have just had such broad reaching positive impacts across my life and the life of those that I love. And I just hope that some people go, oh, geez, actually, I wouldn't mind having a crack at that as well.
Well, I really appreciate what you're saying there, but also I appreciate that in your book you also give special references to the importance of bees and insects. This was something that we wouldn't have seen 5 years ago in gardening and cooking books, but now there is this wonderful movement across the world that we are celebrating the bees, mainly because we have to. Do you want to talk a little of that?
Oh, I'd love to. So, I mean, there's a great recent example of some of the things that I do myself at home here. And I've got, we live on a 800 square meter block.
And you haven't mowed that block since you arrived, have you?
Well, that's where I'm going with this, And I mean, there's some parts that after I got stung on the foot 3 times in a week, because I've got bees as well, I mowed one patch, but I only mow I've got not a great deal of lawn, but I've got lots of trees, but I do have a patch of lawn. But my neighbors keep asking me, like, did you run out of fuel in the mower? Because I mow the grass, but all the clover and the really polycultural parts are left behind in these little islands in the lawn. So it's hardly this golf course, rolled green manicured service.
It's such a great suggestion, because you do say in your book, perhaps just don't mow your lawn. Perhaps just let it go a little wild, so that we can support this, this whole entire landscape that needs to be occurring for us to survive on the planet. I don't understand why there was such a movement in Australia at one time, perhaps just after the Second World War, once we gave up all of our vegetable patches, for us to have these neat mowed blocks. It seems such an odd waste of time.
Well, I mean,
space.
I remember in the small town I grew up in, there was an Italian family, and they didn't have a lawn, and their whole yard was dedicated to fruit and vegetables out the back. They had all these kind of amazing fruit trees out the front, and that was such an oddity I was like, look at this, look at all this like crazy fruit trees, amazing. But it wasn't, it's kind of strange to look at, like they don't have a lawn, they've got fruit trees. But I feel like now, that we're kind of embracing that notion of just growing some food and looking, I guess, to the wisdom of some of those migrant communities and our First Nation peoples that realize that food is an integral part of society, and we don't necessarily need to compartmentalize it and industrialize it and move it away. I mean, to look at the Italian migrant community, for example, they represent an unbroken line of urban agriculture that goes back, to the dawn of civilization in Europe. And to have that wisdom here, then transplanted here in Australia, I mean, it's so we're so lucky to have that cultural element here. And I feel like there's, when I was living in Melbourne a couple of years ago, I was kind of would get heartbroken sometimes because I'm a massive gum tree fiend. And I'd kind of, where I lived in the inner north, I'd be scouring gum tree for gardening like stuff. And usually it would be a part of an old migrant family that the grandmother and grandfather had died. And I'd go to these massive quarter-acre blocks, and there'd be 50-year-old walnut trees and fruit trees. And you could tell that as the deceased parents had aged and then eventually died, that the love, or the tending of the garden had fallen by the wayside. But it just represented such an incredible heritage. I'd be like, oh, why are you selling all this stuff? What's happening here? And, universally, it would be going over to like 4 townhouses. And I was like, what's happening to this walnut tree? And it's like, oh, that'll just be bulldozed. We're selling it next week, And so that was a really kind of heartbreaking experience to realize that there was that physical loss of that food culture that, in the north of Melbourne there. And also, I guess, that intergenerational loss of food culture as well, where, the first wave migrants were like, don't live the old ways. Like, you become a doctor, like pay someone else to grow your food. Forget all this. Don't worry about this. It's
Well, I'm really interested in what you're saying, because it is completely bonkers, because all research shows that the communities that live the longest are the ones that grow their own food, that share their own food.
That's right.
And that celebrate with families. They're the cultures that survive the longest anywhere in the world. And here we are, building townhouses
over the top of it.
It's crazy. But what I want to talk to you now, but perhaps what I want to watch you do, is while we're talking about the Italian community and while we're talking about, growing things, I know that you've got something that's taken straight from the heritage pages. What have you got for us?
So today I'm a massive chili fiend, Chris. Yeah. So I've got one of the recipes from my book is quick pickled chilies as a way of preserving some of that summer harvest. And again, just making it that little bit accessible for people. Like a quick pickle, needs to be refrigerated. It's not shelf stable. But there's certainly, if you start with quick pickling, it's relatively similar. It just doesn't go through the canning, the canning process, as they call it in the States, or the pasteurization process. So it's an accessible entry into creating pickles.
And growing chilies is actually
it's the best.
It's a doddle, isn't it? It's a doddle, Paul.
Yeah, they're so robust. As long as they're not, as long as it's not a really wet summer, they tend to struggle a little bit. It might be interesting to see how the chili plants go this summer, but they like that kind of hot, dry weather, but with moisture, at the ground level. So
we just got with our tomatoes, don't we? Really?
Exactly. Very, very similar issues there. So, Chris, before we jumped on this live call, you've borne witness to my my incredible tech setup. So strap yourselves in, everyone.
Everybody, be prepared to be awed.
Yes, here we go. So what I have got here is not just one camera, but wait for it. Two cameras. Yeah, see, peak. And I've also got a wireless microphone, so I can do it without that. So up here we've got my camping stove, my Trangia, and it's got half a cup of water and now half a cup of white vinegar, and that'll make the basis of our pickling stock. I'll just whip that off there. Oh, it's just like I'm camping out on the main range at Kosciuszko. And I'll put that, so that's lit, kerosene burner. I'm going to add, so that equals a whole cup of liquid. I've got half a cup of sugar in there, and I've got about 2 teaspoons of black peppercorns there. Just going to give a bit of spice. Really, when it comes to this stuff, I mean, I think I've said black peppercorns and coriander seeds in the cookbook. but I like to play pretty loose with my recipes when it comes to actually cooking and preparing them. So then I'm going to chop these chilies up, just cut them in top lengthways, like so, nice and long. You can really chop them up however you like, but I'll just trim a little bit of that green stuff off the top. And they're going into this sterilized jar that I've got here. And so this, this is the kind of thing that with a quick pickle, you can really bust this out in like 10 or 15 minutes. And it's quite simple. Good way to preserve that used crop. And it's a great way to, I love to give pickles as gifts to people.
Honestly, we're moving into that season, so this is perfect timing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you don't worry about the seeds at all. In they all go.
No, seeds they go. I'm sure I've got a taller jar, but that's okay. I'm just going to keep chopping these.
Yeah, snug as a bug in a rug. And Paul, yes, no salt? Chris. No salt?
No, I don't. I tend not to put any salt in there unless I've just totally plonked it in my recipe. The sugar and the vinegar tends to do the trick to create that environment. So I guess it's a little bit like a sweet pickle, this one.
And how long will this last in your fridge for?
I'd say this would last 2 or 3 weeks in the fridge. I mean, in
how long would it last in your fridge?
In my fridge, it'll probably be lucky to see out its first week of life. And I've got about 250 grams of chilies in this one. So just cutting them in half lengthways. And any chili is fine. Long ones, short ones, hot ones, mild ones, whatever you like.
Green ones, it just doesn't matter.
Exactly. And I always try to keep a couple of different chili varieties on the go. I'm a massive habanero fan and love a bit of hot sauce. So I try to grow a good crop of them and jalapenos every year. So I just got to keep jamming those in there. As long as we've got the liquid, it doesn't really matter how much space is left over.
Fantastic.
There we go.
Love it.
There you go.
Give us a little side profile so we can see what it looks like in the jar.
Here we go.
Look at that.
Oh, hey, look at that.
Very pretty.
Beautiful. And then I can even, while it's come back to this one. And there you go.
Look at perfect. That. Perfect. And while your water's sort of boiling up there,
yes.
Well, what I want to, and this is going to be a challenge for you. I've got a couple more questions that I want to ask you. And the challenge for you is to try and answer it really quickly.
Okay.
Let's see how we go.
Let's see where it goes. I've always been bad with filters, Chris. So this could come back to bite me.
What did you cook last night?
Spanakopita.
What would you cook for a family that's coming over and their kids only eat white food?
A lamb shoulder with rice.
How hungry are you, kid?
Yeah, come on, kids. If I can't get you to eat that, then there's no hope for you.
Yeah. And if you were cooking for a gathering, like perhaps a Christmas gathering, let's say, or Christmas Eve gathering, what are you pulling out? What's the Port specialty?
Well, for me, as a part of the celebration of where we are here on the South Coast, it's got to start with a whole stack of rock oysters. The best. I spent the last year of lockdown in 2020 when all my work kind of evaporated working as an oyster farmer. So on one of the best estuaries in Australia for producing oysters, for one of the best farms. And so I'm just addicted now. I always loved oysters, but I find that's a really great start. Then I like to pretty much go straight into like a big shared meal, like a on the bone, slow cooked, whether it's fish, like a shoulder of red meat, a whole bird, probably 3 or 4 amazing sides that feature a single ingredient from the garden. And then if we're definitely talking Christmas time, it's got to be a pavlova from our chook's eggs. And we're in good dairy country. I've got friends that are dairy farmers, so their cream, my chook eggs, and whatever fruits, it's kind of stone fruit time around then, and we can just get away with stone fruit here on the coast this far south. So that's it. Nice and simple. Because, Chris, the one thing I like, I don't like doing is spending 8 hours in the kitchen to feed everyone else. Like I did that as a chef and I've fallen into that trap, as we all have many times, of, organising a social gathering at home. And you end up being the one slaving away in the kitchen while everyone's outside, out the back, socializing and having the time of your life, and you're stressing out. Yeah. And then, it comes time to eat and you're so stressed that you don't eat, you just scull your wine and then kind of collapse into a heap because you've finally done it. So I like to strike that balance of like delicious food, but one that I can kind of, like you can get the meat on early, it's slow cook, it comes out, the salads you can prepare, the pav you can prepare, the oysters. I don't like to shuck for people. I like to teach people to shark. I much
So you
prefer.
give everybody some gloves, the
Yeah,
special
yeah.
gloves.
I use the tea towel method, but yeah. It's like to show them how to fold the tea towel to protect their hands. Especially people that live here on the south coast of New South Wales. If they can't shuck an oyster, or if they visit here and they can't shuck one fresh, I like to tell them it's like visiting or living in Champagne in France and not being able to pull a
You're
koi.
calling them a tourist.
Yeah. I'm like,
they're a tourist.
why are you here? Like this is a truly amazing ingredient that is the best in the world, comes from here. And if you can't shuck an oyster, and most people are really like amazingly surprised at how simple it is.
Once you know where.
Yeah, exactly. I'm yet to have someone not pass the Paul West shucking lesson test.
So I'm going to flip back to your book a little now,
Okay.
Homegrown, going through those seasons. You do talk about the seasons with great love, every single one of them, and you talk about your favourites, parts of the season. You have a favourite season. You have autumn, you're saying is your nearest and dearest. Talk to me a little bit about that.
So here on the South Coast, we're on a kind of very prominent headland where we are here in Bermagui. And I mean, I'd usually shoot these kind of things outdoors, but even now at, 1 o'clock, the coastal northeaster that comes up in the warm weather is just blowing its head off out there. And, we're not as cold as the Southern Ocean, like you Victorians get. But for New South Wales coast, the water's cold here, right through to the end of January. It's not until February, March that the water really starts to warm up, that season behind. And when you get to March, April, all the legwork in the garden's done. You're kind of slowing down from that frenzy of summer weeding and planting and watering, and everything's ripening and becoming ready to harvest or preserve. The days are much more stable. There's that little bit of crispness
in the morning.
In the morning.
And are you having coffee while you're sort of going out there and perusing your garden?
Absolutely. First thing. That's usually I'm outside, I wake up and I go outside and I have a wander through the garden. If it's the middle of summer, I'll do some watering, but in autumn, I'll usually just be out and just suck in some beautiful air and drink my coffee and watch the sun come up and think about what I'm going to do for the day.
Sounds pretty good. Sounds like you're living a difficult life.
Tough. Oh yeah, someone's got to do it though.
Tell me about your water. How's it going?
Well, while we were doing that, you might have seen me looking agitated off to the right of camera. So it's now boiled and that sugar's dissolved, and I'm just going to let it cool maybe another couple of minutes so I don't crack the glass, and then pour it straight in over the top of those pickles, lid on, in the fridge, quick pickled chilies, piece of cake. So easy.
That's fantastic. So easy. Your book is filled with these type of ideas that anyone could do. And there's some really glorious photos of you and your children creating these, little Otto and Bowie. Are they into it all?
So are they into cooking and gardening?
Yeah.
They are. But I mean, by no stretch of the imagination am I like an Instagram nutritionist influencer where my kids just, oh my God, I just can't get enough broccoli into little Billy. I still have all the like real world parent fights where we try not to make it a negative experience. But they go through their phases of like, I'm not eating that. Like, I want a piece of peanut butter toast for dinner. And I'm like, I just made this amazing dinner for you. I don't like it. You haven't tried it. We have all that. We still have all that stuff. But I find that one of the best ways to address that is to get them to have some agency over the meal. And I mean, my favorite way to do that is to get them to harvest something that will then go into the meal. I've got this ridiculous stand of rainbow chard at the moment out in the patch. And like my wife and I are just going, what are we going to do with that? And of course, spenacopita is one of those great things that come up. And I took my 4-year-old out there and he gave me a little pair of scissors and he's harvesting away and he's being meticulous in that 4-year-old way. And then he came in and he shredded the stems off and helped, not chop up, but rip up some of the leaves. And then come dinner time, at first there was a little bit of like battle, like, no, I don't want to eat. But then we reminded him that what was in that was what he had harvested. And he just ate this massive piece of green pie, like smashing the spinach and giving it the thumbs up, as he's eating it. Like that's his gesture. He never says like, this is amazing. He just goes,
I don't know where he got it from, Paul. Where did he get that from?
I don't know. And I like they've both got a little shovel and they've both got a little hand axe, and that's from all the bush stuff rather than the garden stuff. But I just love that. It's been a learning process for me, Chris, to be like, if they say I want to help water, I've just got to let them water the footpath. Pick
your battles, they say. Pick your battles.
They water the fruit trees, but if they want to water the footpath or the same patch of grass, as long as it's with a watering can and a hose, like I just let that go. I'm like, good job, thanks for helping, and then I'll do the proper adult, things need water, but just to have them enthusiastic.
Friends out there, Paul West, parenting tips. Next book coming up.
Yeah, that's right. I know there's a couple, maybe one or two representatives of my publisher floating around in this conversation. So
they're writing this down.
First, the 4th title coming out in 2022, just in time for Christmas. No, I can't even remotely think about another title now, Chris. This is, it's publication day for me for Homegrown, and it just represents that culmination of so much hard work and such a joyous day for me as an author to see your baby in the world. It's such you can't. I don't get tired today. I am like it's all happening, but it's just one of those beautiful days where you're like, yes, it's out in the real wide world. So.
And it's a perfect sort of gift to actually give to yourself. I recommend that people should just buy this for themselves. It's the type of book that you can dip in and out of. It's the type of book that you can refer to throughout the year. But also there's what you've experienced here, listening to Paul, that laconic tone, that friendliness. It's right there in all of your writing, Paul. Congratulations to you.
Making me blush, Chris. Thank you so much.
Am I though? Because I don't see that.
You can't tell. It's because of the red hat. And probably like a slightly too sun-kissed face that I'm definitely blushing. Such kind words. Thank you.
It's actually a really kind book, actually, when we use that term. There it is, Homegrown, A Year of Growing, Cooking and Eating by the one and only Paul West. We've already fallen in love with Paul. We all know him from television and from various things that he's been doing. But I'm so grateful that he spent some time with us today. Let's see how that water is going. Let's see you doing the
okay, here we go. Ready
cameras.
For here we go. Camera change. Here we go. Over to the
drum roll.
Here we go. And there we go.
Oh.
And that can just go in, spices and all.
Please don't
burn it. It's going to be enough. Boom. Just the top. And then lid on. And then we can come back to first camera. And there we go. Quick pickled chilies. I mean, it doesn't get any quicker than that. Chuck it in the fridge for 2 to 3 weeks and eat it with everything. I eat it with everything except dessert. And sometimes I'm even tempted to have this with dessert. So that easy.
Congratulations to you.
Chris, thank you so much.
I've enjoyed this time so much.
As have I.
Good luck.
And thanks to everyone that joins. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it so much. Chris, anytime.
Careful.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.